Well, three lessons, I think. One is we should guard against this notion of British exceptionalism. It's good to be confident, but one must always look to see what the learnings are, especially for these sorts of things where other countries are experiencing similar patterns. I think we need to be sensitive to situations where we can take more risk and speed things up. This is down to sort of planning the fifth runway at Heathrow, building HS2, or our reactions to COVID. There are areas where slowness and deliberation is effective. There are areas where it's genuinely not, and we need to be sensitive to that. And I think the third thing, which I haven't mentioned, is I think some of the decision-making in our big institutions was conducted by people who were both psychologically and emotionally removed from the consequences on the people whom it impacted. This is, in a sense, wealthy, privileged people, because the class structure is still more enmeshed in this country and entrenched than in others. So I think there's lots of examples of where people have made decisions and made them in a slightly cavalier way. And then the knock-on consequences for the population haven't always been anticipated. And actually, we have to create greater empathy and understanding in our leaders who can operate in quite a detached way, as if it's not their world and that other people are not part of their world. And I think that explains some of the impact of this, and some of the ways that this has impacted ethnic minority communities and poorer communities in our country more. And
you would see that as a cultural factor, not just economic?
Yeah, because I think we have a more stratified society for reasons that I've identified. And if your kind of life experience is going to a boarding school, going to an Oxford college, actually, if I want to be really extreme about it, being a member of the Bullingdon Club and smashing up a restaurant and no consequences because people, etc., you're going to have a different attitude to your decisions and the impact of your decisions. You're just going to have less empathy for the people that you've never met or had to deal with. Now, intellectually, you can talk about a leveling up agenda. You can talk about doing all sorts of things, yeah? But emotionally, where does the empathy come from? It comes from lived experience. It comes from relationships. It comes from seeing the impact of something on someone. And if you're distant from that through your life experiences, that you're inevitably not going to have that. And we have existed in a society where who you are, how you communicate, how you hold yourself has been held to be more important than what you achieve sometimes, and then the consequences of your actions. Mm-hmm. And so there's been a lot about explaining what you do and putting a good face on it, not admitting mistakes, yeah, because that preserves your sense of who you are and where and where you're at. Now, other countries and leaders would do that as well. Clearly, in the US, that's been exceptionally the case in the case of sort of Donald Trump. But I'd say that trait is less culturally kind of the case in the US, and arises from the particular psychology of their current president.
And it sounds like these lessons that you're talking about would be just as applicable to business leaders in your network, political as well as political leaders.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think our businesses would, and some of them have absorbed this, because any of our institutions that have had exposure to the external world have had to learn to thrive in that world, like our academic institutions, like our big cultural institutions that go out and sort of export. or sometimes our financial institutions. But aspects of our national life that have been more closeted, I think, have it could potentially reflect a bit more. And by the way, I'm not saying that there isn't a single country in the world that doesn't need to reflect.